I am Isabella Panizza, the head of the Global Communication Digital Labs here in Enel, and it's a really great pleasure to have you all here for the 9th edition of the Enel Focus On in San Francisco. Thank you so much for coming. Since we started back in Rome in 2016, it was actually almost 2 years ago, we had a great success. Of course, we were hoping to achieve it, but really to have over 500,000 following us and watching us in live stream has been really, really great. That really means something, that bringing together creative ideas and experts, it really works to drive change and inspire the progress. So here we are. And after Rome, we've been in very different countries. We traveled around. We went to Madrid, we went to London, we went to Santiago del Chile, to North America, to New York, to Brazil. And talking about countries, here today, we have experts coming from 9 different ones. So before starting, I think it would be very good if we all introduce ourselves, saying our name and where we come from. So shall we start from you?
Hi, good morning. My name is Sally French. I came very far, a whole 5 blocks from San Francisco, and I am the founder of the site, The Drone Girl.
Hi, good morning all. My name is Marco Salvadori, coming a little bit far away from you. So coming from Marina, living in San Francisco, currently head of the business development at one of the many artificial intelligence company.
Hi everyone, my name is Leo Prieto. I come from the south of the continent, from Chile, Santiago de Chile, and I'm the founder of Firewire, the most read Spanish language blog in the world.
Hi, good morning. My name is Antonio Serrano. I am a lawyer, a PhD professor in commercial law, and I am the CEO of a Spanish business school which deals with coding and entrepreneurship, which is Spartan Hack.
Good morning, everyone. I come from Argentina. I'm Carissa Herrera, and I write about, I'm a journalist about innovation and technology.
Hey, everyone. I'm Barry Pausman. I work at the Institute for the Future, where we do strategic foresight and futures thinking. My background is in the SDGs with the UN as digital strategist.
Hi, everyone. I'm Veronica Cacciagli. I come from Italy. I'm an environmental journalist and mostly working on web communication.
Hi, good morning. My name is René Silva. I'm from Brazil. I live in Rio de Janeiro, and I work in the Voz da Comunidade. It's like a voice of Islams.
Good morning. My name is Federico Caleno. I work in Enel in e-mobility department.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jimena Vega. I'm from Lima, Peru. I'm CEO of my company's name is Clarity. And we are mixing marketing with sociology, anthropology, design thinking, and think tanks.
Hi, I'm George. I'm from Romania. I'm not going to tell you my family name. You're not going to remember it.
You could try.
Okay, try this. Buchnic. And
at the end of the round,
yeah.
one of you will have to
I'm going to run a quiz. So I'm a TV journalist. I've been that all my life. I'm a tech vlogger, blogger, and I have a media company on the digital, on the internet.
Hi, I'm Santiago from Colombia. I'm a librarian, as you see in my face. I work with digital transformation for the cultural sector all around the world.
Good morning, I'm Luca Conti, I'm coming from Italy. I started blogging in 2002, and since then I became a social media consultant, book author, and freelance journalist.
I'm Rebecca Watson. I come all the way from the East Bay, which might as well be a different country. I am the founder of the website Skeptic, which is a network of blogs focused on science and technology as they relate to women. All around the world, we have Spanish and Norwegian and Swedish versions as well.
I'm Will Smith. I'm the founder and CEO of FooVR and the host of The Foo Show, where we make programming for virtual reality.
Hi, I'm Emily Kirsch, founder and CEO of Powerhouse. We are the world's first and only incubator dedicated to intelligent energy. So we house and invest in clean energy startups at the seed stage. I was born here in San Francisco and now live and work in Oakland.
Hi, everyone. I'm Daniela Lauria from Italy.
and I'm a journalist based in Rome, and I work for an online newspaper called Bliss Quotidiano.
Good morning, my name is Alf Bingham. I traveled here from Mount Shasta, California, which is about as far north as you can go and still be in the state of California. I am a founder of Innocentive, which we'll hear a little bit more about today, I think.
Don't spoil it.
And the last one is, good morning to everybody. I am Eugenio Spagnuolo from Italy. I write about new technology, culture, and innovation, and I'm here from Wired, the Italian edition.
Thank you so much, and I will say good morning and good evening, because as we said, we are live streaming, so a lot of people is following us on different time zones. So today we are going to speak about how open innovability does make the world a better place to live. And we are going to do it with the father of the open innovation, who is the Professor Henry Chesborough. He's the director of the Center of the Corporate Innovation at the UC at Berkeley. And basically, it's a bit like if we were talking about energy, we were inviting here like Nikola Tesla or Thomas Edison. We couldn't get any better. He is the one we had to have here. But before before leaving the floor to Henry, I am really happy to have here with me Ernesto Chorra, and Ernesto is our Chief Innovability Officer, and he will spoil a bit why this Enel Focus On is actually a really special one, and together with Craig Jones, the chairman of Innocentive, they will make something really special before starting the conversation. Please, Ernesto.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Thanks, Isabella. Hello to everybody. I'm the Chief Innovability Officer, so people think you don't work. What's your job? Because they never heard this word. Because we wanted to be creative, so we invented this new word that is a mix of innovation and sustainability. Why? We have a unique function managing innovation and sustainability, and I have the pleasure and the honor to lead this function. What do? We have opened up our innovation because we want to survive. What is the real aim of sustainability? Survival. If you don't innovate, you die. It happens with companies, it happens with us. If you don't change the skin of your lips every 2 hours, you die. If you don't change the whole skin that you have every 28 days, you die. So change is mandatory, and it's more mandatory for companies due to the disruption in technology, in the markets. So we need to innovate. If we don't innovate, we die. So to be sustainable, we must innovate. On the other side, if you want to innovate, involve the most talented people outside the company, the most talented startups, the biggest and important partners, the research centers, the students, the professors, the most talented people, you must be sustainable. Because the most talented people don't work only for money. They work to leave something of themselves to the humanity, to leave a real sign and to prove that their life has been spent in a useful way, not only for themselves. So those kind of people are attracted by sustainable companies with huge challenges that can better the world. So being sustainable is a prerequisite to be innovative, to attract the most talented people. And being innovative is a prerequisite to be sustainable. That's why we can't distinguish innovation and sustainability. For us, innovation and sustainability are a unique topic. And I could give you hundreds of examples of what we did, improving sustainability and in an innovative way, getting business results. Every SDG is a great opportunity for companies, because every SDG is a challenge for the humanity that can disclose billionaire markets. We have selected one SDG as a corporate mantra. SDG number 7, providing access to energy in a reliable, sustainable, affordable way. This is an SDG. What does it mean? 1.2 billion people without any energy access, 1.8 billion people with a not reliable, not sustainable, not affordable energy access. 3 billion of potential customers. This is a huge market. This is a great business opportunity. This is not only doing good to be good. This is doing good to be sustainable, to sustain a sustainable growth of the company. So we have chosen other 3 SDGs, and we have selected some numeric targets that we have in our industrial plan. And when we communicate to shareholders, we don't communicate the industrial plan on the side and the sustainable plan on the other side. They're a unique plan, because achieving SDGs is a way to get the business targets. And how can we do it? Opening up our innovation, opening up, first of all, our hearts to the contribution of people outside the company. That's why we are working with big partners, such as Mercedes, BMW, Nissan, Mitsubishi, Tesla, LG, Samsung, and I could add many of them. We are more or less 130 big partners, companies we are innovating with. That's why we are managing innovation with external companies and small companies. We have selected more or less 3,000 startups in the last 2 years. We have started collaboration with 140 of them, and we have scaled up more or less 40 startups, starting from 0 revenues with us, and now being used by us in more than 4 countries. So, startups, big companies, medium companies, and innovators all around the world. But how to get in contact with them? We knew that we needed a powerful solution to be in contact with inventors, solvers all around the world. And we didn't want to do it by ourselves. So we have found the most exciting and useful platform in the world, Innocentive. Some years ago, we started working with Innocentive, and people were a little bit skeptic. Even in our company, they said, what can we do with this platform, getting ideas from our projects or solutions from outside? And the figures are impressive, because we launched only 15 challenges, but we solved 12. And we have found solutions that can even save the lives of our people. How to connect people who are in tunnels under a dam. They are isolated, usually isolated. There is not any connection solution for them. They could work 5-6 hours under a dam without any connection. This was a challenge. We found the solution. Now our colleagues under the dam working, they have a telco solution. And now this telco solution has been adopted by other utilities all around the world, thanks to the contribution that we had from Innocentive. This is just only one. This is just an example, real example of an effective innovation that is providing us more safety, so better sustainable world, and more innovation. And we have many innovations that we have achieved, and I give you just one, and after I end my speech, very fast speech, because after we have the father of open innovation that will illustrate, and we have the founder of Innocentive that will have the floor. In the United States, we had an opportunity. We had a geothermal plant, very big, in Stillwater, in Fallon, Fallon is in Nevada, and we had an idea. Why don't we merge, why don't hybridize the geothermal source of energy with concentrated solar plant and with a photovoltaic plant? But we asked a very, very famous university from the United States with this question: is it possible? And after some years of study, they came back and they say, no. We were a little bit disappointed. And we asked them, how is it possible? Or why it isn't possible? And they explained to us that it wasn't possible for this, and this. 3 reasons of three reasons that killed our dream. No, they didn't kill our dream, because we switched these reasons why it's impossible into challenges to our ecosystem. So we have found solutions. We have implemented the first worldwide geothermal plant hybridized with concentrated solar plant and with photovoltaic plant. And the Energy Association from the United States, they have awarded us considering this plant as the most innovative renewable plant in the world. So we did. And what the most famous, probably, technology university in the United States said it was impossible, we made it possible, thanks to the passion, the willingness of our colleagues. Was it an innovation? Was it a new sustainable source of energy? It's both. Because if you hybridize three renewable technologies and the sum of 1 + 1 + 1 does 4, you have a new sustainable way to produce energy. You have a new source of integrated provision of energy, and you have a great innovation that makes the world more sustainable. This is what we call innovability. This is what we want to do, leveraging on the passion, the willingness, the knowledge of people all around the world. We can't do it without the digital platforms that allow us to be able to get in contact with people giving us innovation from all around the world, because innovation can come from everywhere and has not any hierarchy. The unique hierarchy is the hierarchy of the ideas and the passion. Thanks. So now to what? We should sign? Is it true? I didn't imagine that we are here to sign. So I must call Craig Jones, who is the global CEO and president of Innocenti. It's a great pleasure to have you here.
Likewise.
I pass the word to Craig, and Craig will illustrate us what Innocenti could do, not only for Enel, but for companies.
Thank you very much. Well, good morning, everybody. Again, Craig Jones, Executive Chairman of Innocentive. Let me start by saying how excited I am and my colleague Alf Bingham are to be partners with Enel. We have been partners for the last couple of years, and today marks the day that we launch a larger and continued sustained effort to help Enel on their sustainability initiative. A little bit about myself. I am a 35-year veteran of the venture capital and private equity industries, where I have been investing for all those years, both domestically and internationally, including in Italy, going all the way back to the 80s. I've had the opportunity to invest in waves of new technology that have come to America and to the world. Those waves of innovation have involved things such as how to buy things easier, eBay and Amazon, or how to search for things better, like Google or Yahoo. But perhaps the greatest opportunity of the internet is to bring people together in a way to combine intelligence, human intelligence, in order to move the ball forward on science and technology and business issues and social issues. And that's what Innocentive does. We allow prepared minds to work on projects that are brought forward by Fortune 500 companies, by nonprofit organizations, and by government agencies for the betterment of those entities and the world. We have over 400,000 prepared minds, people who have self-selected over the last 15 years to participate in these great challenges, such as the ones that Enel are working on. What does Innocentive bring to the table? Well, one, we bring these 400,000 people in 300 different countries around the world who have decided that they want to spend some of their spare time, if you will, working on these tough problems. Second of all, we bring a methodology known as challenge development initiatives. And third of all, we allow both outside and inside. We allow the employees of the corporation to participate in these challenges where appropriate, but also people from around the world. And no other company does these three things simultaneously. We've been very active in the area of sustainability. Among the clients that we have worked for include the Environmental Defense Fund, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, the EU, ARPA-E, which is the U.S. Department of Energy Advanced Research Projects, The Economist, of course, Enel itself in 15 challenges, General Fusion, and others. Not every project is about saving the world. Sometimes it's practical problems that many people would look at and say, it's not even a problem. So for example, Enel decided that one of the problems, day-to-day problems in power transmission is weather. And they had a challenge related to how freezing temperatures, rain and then freeze, could put ice over transmission lines and degrade the power transmission. And every time you degrade the transmission, you're basically burning fuel without getting benefit, right? So they put a challenge out around the world for an innovative way to deal with this. And I'm proud to say that that's one of the 12 that was awarded for an innovative mechanical system judged best in terms of cost, engineering, and installation simplification. So it's not just an idea, but a practical solution that could be applied by Enel. Now it's up to Enel engineers, of course, to take this proposal and make it reality, but that's your job, right? Another example is solar power, which, as you know, Enel is a worldwide leader in solar power. And our world is drenched by sunshine every day. We get enough energy to power everything, but most of it bounces off our planet and back out into the atmosphere. So Enel had the idea that maybe if you could gather more of the sunshine around the actual photovoltaic units that go on the ground next to it and to the side of it, that you might be able to absorb more by the units, thus increasing the efficiency. And they did a challenge on that using nano coating solutions that won the $15,000 award. And interestingly enough, the solution came from Guatemala. So it's an example of where it can happen anywhere in the world. He mentioned the success level that we've had. How often are awards actually given? And I'm proud to say that 80% of the time, awards are issued. And in the case of Enel, 12 out of 15, it happens to match, thank goodness, matches our corporate averages. So 80% of the time, the results are good enough that the customer, and it's completely the decision of Enel, decides, yes, that solution is good enough, we're going to issue an award, that's worth working on further. And so that's a testament to the success that Enel and Innocentive have had together, and we're launching today a new, exciting 4-year program to continue this kind of innovation together. You should think of this kind of innovation as a supplement to what Enel does internally. A company with the over 60,000 employees and the resources of Enel has a number of different ways that they innovate, internally and externally. We are an important supplement to that. It's like throwing yeast onto making of bread. We can make it so that they make more bread and they make it faster and different kinds of bread, and it tastes good. Another question that I get a lot is, who are the solvers? So first I want to tell you just a little bit about where they come from. Not surprisingly, since we're based in the country, about 1/3 of all the solvers come from the United States. But there's heavy participation, particularly from other English-speaking countries, such as the UK and India, and continental Europe participates quite well. But I mentioned 300 different countries. In terms of the winners, about 50% come from the United States. And again, heavy participation from Canada and Australia. As I was going through the data for this, one of the things I noted was that a country that punches above its weight is Italy. So Italy has less than 1% of the world's population, about 60 million people in a 7 billion population world, yet over 3% of all winners come from Italy. So the innovation can be found by prepared minds wherever they are, whether it's Guatemala, whether it's Italy, whether it's San Francisco, whether it's someplace else in the world, like India. Another interesting aspect of this is the education level. So not surprisingly, a lot of the people that participate in this kind of endeavor are well educated. So right now, about a third of the people that participate are PhD level individuals around the world or postdoc. About another third masters and above. So 2/3 of the people that are participating are highly educated professionals from around the world. When you look at the winners, it becomes even higher. So 45% are PhDs or postdocs, and 30% masters. So you have 3/4 of all the winners, highly educated people from around the world. But here's an even more interesting fact. A majority of the time, the degree of the person that won the award was not in the specific area being tested. And why is that? It seems counterintuitive, and the answer is because they're able to think outside the box. They've been trained, they have a highly trained mind of how to think scientifically, how to think in engineering terms, how to think mathematically, but they're coming at it not from someone who's spent their entire career working on it and therefore tend to think about incremental improvements, but instead look at entirely new ways to address the subject matter. And that's all the difference in the world. It's the out-of-the-box thinking that occurs when you get all of these different kinds of minds from different cultures, different languages, different upbringings, scientifically trained to be able to look at a problem a new way. I mentioned that we have 400,000 trained minds that have self-selected to be part of the incentive network. Also important is the CDI methodology, which we have 15 years perfecting. And basically it comes down to this. Number one, what are we really trying to solve? What problem are we really trying to solve? That sounds like such a simple question, but in fact it is what so many entities get tangled up in trying to figure out. We have experts who have done this so many times. We help them think through what problem they're actually trying to solve. Equally important is number two. How do we communicate this in writing to people who have no idea what our problem is? And finally, I mentioned that we do inside and outside. There will be opportunities from time to time when appropriate for Enel's own employees to participate in some of these problems, as well as the outside networks, and Incentive allows that to happen. So it all comes down to how do you move the ball forward? And we're very proud to be partners with Enel on their sustainability innovation mantra that is not theory, it's reality, and it's going to be more reality working with Incentive over the next 4 years. Thank you.
So thanks a lot, Craig. And We are here not only to celebrate a partnership, but even a marriage, not between us, but, between the most important crowdsourcing platform in the world, Innocentive, and our crowdsourcing platform, that is openinnovability.com. In fact, we have it, and we don't want to make to become competitor of Innocentive, obviously, but we want to work with them because we would like to transform openinnovability.com into the platform of the clean technologies in the world for innovation. How to innovate with a platform all around the world, pursuing crowdsourcing. We didn't have any answer, but we tried. And after we have defined a digital door for all innovators that want to work with us. So from our openinnovability.com, we can see all the proposals that arrive, and we can forward them to our innovation managers. They will evaluate those proposals, they give feedback, and they can start innovating with people or startups or research centers or universities that can send their proposals through our website. But we couldn't do it without the fundamental support of Innocentive, their network, their crowdsourcing methodologies, and the people that can work with our innovation managers even to teach us how to better do this job. They have their own methodology, they have the skills, and we need to be humble and to follow them in this path towards a better energy world, because we are trying to lead this energy transition to renewables. So, it's time to sign for this marriage. No divorce admitted. I will do, not writing Zorro as I did before, when we were trying. I write as a young kid, I know. It's up to you.
Thank you. And I signed as the Flash when he was Zorro, so this
Yeah.
time I will be Craig Jones.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
thanks a lot.
Thank you and good luck.
Thank you.
And now it's time for Henry to have the floor. Thank you so much, Craig.
Well, good morning to all of you. Oh, thank you. We've already heard about this conjunction between open innovation and sustainability and how it might work in practice. But let's step back and think about how it might work in theory. So I'm going to give some background to that. I'm going to raise a couple of concerns and challenges that I see in trying to enable this. And my goal is really to start a conversation, because after I finish, we're going to go into a conversation. So let me begin with laying a bit of a foundation, getting into both some good examples and maybe some concerns, and then we'll get into our conversation together. So this began about the same time Innocentive did, about 15 years ago. So when some of you were blogging back in 2002, I was writing this book that came out in April of 2003, and the book was widely ignored when it first came out. But happily, it did start to get some attention after 6 or 8 months, and it's actually still part of the conversation 15 years later. So for that, I'm really, really grateful. I do want to make one clarification. Unlike Nikola Tesla, I did not invent open innovation. Open innovation, as you're going to see, is a series of knowledge flows, both going into an organization, but also going outside of an organization. What I did was I observed a set of activities and practices, and then I put a label on top of it that seems to have stuck. So unlike Nikola Tesla, who actually really discovered some things, I just noticed and labeled them. 10 years later, I did a search term on open innovation because when the book first came out, there was no meaning to this idea of open innovation. On Google, I got about 200 results back, and when I looked through the results, this company opened an innovation office in San Francisco, and so the word open and the word innovation had shown up near each other, but that was it. But 10 years later, more than 400 million page links, which I did not read all of, but then it was really, there is something going on here. There is a model, a concept, a pattern that has really taken hold. So let me give you a sense of what this is about. We start with an innovation process, and I'm showing that here drawn as a funnel. And in this organization, in this innovation process, ideas move from a research and scientific foundation over here out to a marketplace over here. And you probably can't read this, but this says, "Stolen with pride" from Henry Chesbrough. And this is from a guy named Bengt Jauholt from a Swedish company, SCA, and his PowerPoint skills are way better than mine. So he's given me permission to steal it back and share it with you all, which is kind of an open innovation way to go, if you think about it. So in the beginning, the way the companies innovated, and this is, I would say, true for most of the 20th century, for most of the largest firms, ideas came from a science and technology base through to the market, but it was all done inside the four walls of the organization. It was a model of deep vertical integration, if you will. So what's changed is this idea of opening up the innovation process, which you can visualize as drilling holes in this funnel, in this innovation process, so that ideas and knowledge can flow in from the outside and go to the outside. So there is an outside-in part, and the second part, by the way, less written about, I would also say so far, less practiced, there is an inside-out part as well. So those are the two sets of knowledge flows in the innovation process. And so with this, ideas can still start from your own technology base and go through to the market. There's nothing wrong with that. If you've got great ideas and they're being worked on and customers are ready for it, absolutely. But it's only one path in a more general model. In the more general model, other ideas, things that are not going to go through to your marketplace. In the closed model, this was essentially waste. We had nothing to do with it. We didn't know what to do. It just sits on the shelf gathering dust, and it does not improve with age like a fine wine. Instead, the teams get broken up. The ideas more or less get lost over time. But in an open innovation model, things that you're not going to use internally can be taken out externally for others to use. So that's that inside-out part I was talking about. And of course, bringing external ideas in, and this is one of the areas where Innocentive's methodology is so powerful, is wouldn't it be great to activate the minds of 400,000 people around the world, point them on problems that you're working on, and by the way, you only pay if they develop a solution. They bear the risk. You only pay for success. All the people in your R&D organization, you pay them for everything. All the good stuff they do, all the stuff that gets wasted, all the dead ends, all the blind alleys, you bear 100% of all that risk. But in the Innocentive challenge model, you put the challenge out there, and if nobody can solve it, there's no payment. And if somebody does solve it, that's great. You pay them, but the other people who worked on it who didn't get a solution don't get paid. You can also bring ideas inside for not only new markets, but existing marketplaces. And then there's even the boomerang, where things that start inside but aren't going forward occasionally are allowed to spin out to become a new spin-off or startup on their own. And now they're out of the corporation, they're out of the laboratory, they're out in the wild. Maybe they're sitting here in the founder's space in some collaborative working environment. But the important thing is they're being exposed to things they would not see if they had stayed inside. So they have to really get out and try to get a customer. They've got to convince people who don't work for them to come join them and work with them. They've got to sell. These are things that you don't have to do in a corporate laboratory. Much of the time, nothing comes of it, but if something does catch fire, there's an opportunity to bring it back in again and go after a new opportunity. So all of these are part of this open innovation model. So think of outside in, think of inside out, and the knowledge that you're mobilizing comes both from inside your organization and, really importantly, mobilizing knowledge outside your organization. Now, some of the things, sometimes people say, well, isn't this open source software? And the answer is yes, and well, it's actually open source and more. So one of my academic colleagues, or two of them actually, Dalander and Gan from Imperial College in London, talked about both the inbound and outbound, so this is outside in and inside out flows of knowledge, for both, they chose this word pecuniary, and I'm very sorry about that, because I've been speaking English all my life, and I'm not sure I've ever used the word pecuniary ever in my life, but they did. But for, let's call it monetary and non-monetary related things. So the open source domain, for example, falls squarely here, and the flows go both ways. And because of that, we get our classic MBA 2x2, which we use a lot in our classrooms to get our people to think about there's more than one factor to consider. So we try not to tax them too much, so we try to get them to think about two factors at the same time and how they might relate to each other. So if you ask what is open innovation, as a result of the work that's been done by myself and many others, we now have a one sentence, but it's a long sentence, and it does have this word pecuniary in it, and I'm sorry about that. But the idea is about purposively managed knowledge flows across organizational boundaries. So we're no longer restricted to the knowledge in our own organization. And the other part of this is, how do we connect these to our organization's business model? Now, business model can be a controversial term for the social sector or nonprofits or government, but if we think about a business model as a way that an organization creates value for the larger society and is able to grab enough of that value that they're able to continue to operate themselves, if you think about that approach to a business model, you can see that organizations in all sectors have to do this. They have to have some kind of a way to sustain themselves going forward. So what can open innovation, as just defined here, what can this offer to sustainability? I want to start with an example that's been very successful, that's been out now for over a decade. And the reason I'm starting with what might seem like an old example is we can actually see kind of what's happened since. And then I'm going to go forward and show you some newer examples where either we don't know yet or maybe it didn't work so well. But Unilever, 10 years ago, their vice president of open innovation, and yes, a consumer packaged goods company, has a job title, vice president of open innovation. My mother was so happy. Described to me this very kind of a twofold agenda for Unilever, and it's very consistent with what Ernesto said to you a few minutes ago. If we're going to survive, we have to innovate. And in Unilever's case, they thought, yes, we've got to grow our revenues, we've got to double the size of our business. At the very same time, and in the very same sentence, we've got to reduce in half our environmental impact. So if you will, it's like 1/4 of the impact per dollar of revenue, if you will. And how do we create a culture that inspires our people to take actions every day to achieve this? And where open innovation figures in is that we need this out-of-the-box thinking if we're going to really transform the environmental impact of a major corporation. People inside the organization are too often locked into a current set of activities and processes and may not be aware enough about different ways of approaching it. So they deliberately opened up this challenge across the company and outside the company to mobilize a lot of knowledge both inside and outside to try to do this. And as I promised, by taking an old example, we can kind of look and see what's happened since. And they haven't done it on all dimensions yet, but they've made sizable improvements across a number of dimensions since they undertook this about a decade ago. A lot of it has come from their supply chain. They've been able to mobilize their suppliers. They've also been able to mobilize social sector actors and nonprofits to help them work with them and also validate and audit these activities. You've probably heard the term greenwashing, where companies say these wonderful things, and they've got really good communications people who've got great stories, but then you're left wondering, what's really going on? And that's one of the roles that the social sector plays here, is that the nonprofits, the NGOs, actually partner and audit some of these activities. So much of what I'm sharing with you has been audited by independent organizations. It isn't just a company beating its chest and saying, look how green we are. That would be the greenwashing problem. Another more recent example is still under development. Some of you may have heard of this. This is a brewery in Denmark, Carlsberg, that understood that of its environmental impact, 40% of its impact was coming from its packaging. And once they understood that, they said, how do we get more sustainable and more green in our packaging? And they came up with this idea of a bottle made from wood, more specifically from wood fiber, so that they have it's a sustainable source, it's biodegradable, much more environmentally beneficial than the glass bottles from before. This was announced at the World Economic Forum in 2015 by the CEO of the brewery, Carlsberg, and what they're doing is really classic open innovation. The bottle is supposed to ship, knock on some wood here, wherever we can find it, the end of this year. But the process was finding a startup who had this idea that we could do this, and they got connected with Carlsberg, who knew they wanted it, but didn't know how to do it. The startup knew how to do it, but didn't know who wanted it, so we made that initial connection. Then the startup, in turn, had worked with a Danish technical university to kind of develop a proof of concept and really show that this could actually work and meet the pressures, internal pressures, that when you've got carbonated beer inside the container, pressure builds up over time, and you need to be sure that the bottle is strong enough to handle that. The startup was able to attract some investment from another packaging company based in Denmark, who took, I think, a 30% ownership of the company, so not only provided money, but also provided some management, because the startup, like many, was a very small group of people, that not necessarily the most sophisticated management in the world. So they teamed up to do that. And Carlsberg didn't provide money, but did provide the requirements. Here's what that bottle has got to do if we're going to be able to use it. And then they provided a second thing, which was the carrot. If you can meet these requirements, here's the purchase order. And investors loved the idea of, if my startup can execute, here's how the market's going to develop. And Carlsberg did something else very interesting. They did not claim any intellectual property on this development. They allowed all the intellectual property to remain with the entrepreneurs who were developing this. And that means that the eventual markets for this wood fiber-based packaging could expand well beyond brewery and bottling to many other applications. And the startups are essentially building out this first vertical, if you will, in beer, scaling up the processes, validating their capabilities, and now they have the opportunity in the future to take it to many other areas as well, which will also really help sustainability. So the Sustainable Development Goals, I think, become an important part of both innovation and growth. And to achieve these, you're going to need some kinds of open innovation processes to do them, because no organization by itself can deliver on any of these. To achieve any of these materially, it's going to take collaboration of the kind that we were just seeing here, between universities, between startups, between investors, between large companies. All of this has to come together to achieve these sustainability development goals. But if we can do that, that's a powerful source of new business growth. And that, I think, is what makes it so exciting, is that it can scale. Doing environmentally sustainable stuff is wonderful, but if it can't scale, we're not going to achieve the social impact we need to really make a dent in the world. So it's that combination of sustainability and scalability that is so powerful and so exciting. All right, so that's the promise. A couple of cautionary tales that it suggests that it's not going to be a smooth ride all the way up to the right in our growth curves. Our friends at Goodyear created an initiative to use recycled materials to make a green tire. Which, think about all the rubber that goes into tires, think how many tires are being produced, how long it takes for the tires to decay, and how much landfill is being occupied by these. Wouldn't it be great if we could have a much greener source of material? So to Goodyear's credit, they developed a project, they created a tire, and it turned out they could actually make one, but to have the performance characteristics the tire needed, you had to do a bunch of new things, so it tended to be a little more expensive. So before they launched into high volume production, they decided to test consumer interest in the green tire. So a couple of engineers from the development team put on Goodyear shirts, went into a Goodyear store, they set up a little pop-up kiosk with a green tire there, and as customers were coming in to shop for tires, they were there to talk with the customers who might have an interest. And so by doing this very simple test, they were able to engage with, I think, about 150 end customers over a 2-week period of time in different stores. And the customers liked the idea that the tire was green. And they said, well, how do you do that? Well, we're using recycled materials. Oh, that's great. So is the tire cheaper to purchase because it's recycled materials? So the customers liked the idea, but they expected a discount rather than being willing to pay a premium for the product. So once that became clear to Goodyear, they said, our costs are actually a lot higher. Now, eventually, if you scale this thing up, the costs do come down, but they weren't willing or able to invest 5 or 10 years to try to get the costs down. And they didn't see a customer segment that was willing to pay a premium in the early days. So they didn't continue the project. They actually canceled it. So we do not have a green tire from Goodyear or anybody else because customers like it, but they weren't willing to pay a premium for it. And I see this in other sustainability areas. Customers truly care about sustainability right up to the point when they have to take their wallet out and pay for it, and then they're very price conscious. And so sustainability sells, but it doesn't sell at a premium, not at scale. Another cautionary tale comes from our friends at NASA. And NASA has been embracing this open innovation model, particularly the crowdsourcing piece, much like Innocentive, for some of the challenges that they're working on that they couldn't solve. So they've been active in doing this. A number of outside contracts. They've got a whole organization inside NASA that does it. One of my academic colleagues, a woman at NYU named Hila Lifshitz Asaf, during her PhD at Harvard, she actually went to the Johnson Space Control Center for 2 years and attended meetings every 2 weeks as these projects were being issued and then the responses were received. So she actually got to see what happened inside the organization once the challenges were solved and the solutions came back. Most of the time we stop there. Isn't it great? We put out this call, we got these solutions back, and there's some good solutions here. And we all feel great, and the story ends. But because Harvard has a lot of money, she kept going to the meetings every 2 weeks for the full 2 years and was able to see what happened afterward. And this is what I want to share with you here. They did indeed get some great solutions to these challenges. But inside NASA, they had something of an identity crisis in response to this. We came to NASA as engineers because it is rocket science. It's hard, it's challenging, it's inspiring. This is the work we came to do at NASA. And now people who aren't even rocket scientists, they're not even PhDs in our field, are solving problems we weren't able to solve, so we look foolish. Moreover, we're spending our time evaluating their answers instead of doing our own answers. You see the problem? It really creates a challenge inside your culture to embrace and enjoy this. So good for her. Now, in NASA's case, once they identified the problem, they've been working hard to shift the culture from being, we are the engineers who solve the hardest problems, to we are the engineers who find the best solutions wherever they may come from. So it's from a problem-solving culture to a solution-finding culture. And the other thing I would say they've learned is that the solutions, when they arrive, are not simply plug and play. A lot of additional change is needed before you can really plug that solution in and get a real result. So there's still a lot of hard work to be done, and they've learned to celebrate that work too. You could think of that as system integration work, where you take this new concept and bring it in, and all the other things that have to work with it are managed together. So between solution finding and system integration, they're building a new technical culture that can make this work. But organizations that don't do this run the risk of getting great solutions from outside and then creating their own identity crisis inside from their own technical team. So this is my last slide, but just to sum up a few observations and lessons I would offer, and then I'm very much looking forward to the conversation. The first lesson, and we heard it earlier from our friends at Incentive and Enel, useful knowledge can come from anywhere. Joy's Law, named after Bill Joy, Berkeley grad, by the way. Most of the smart people, whoever you are, they don't work for you. So here is a process that can mobilize the knowledge of smart people who don't work for you and put it to work with and for you. A second part, and this is a part again that is not as often practiced. So as you think about this and write about it, I really encourage you to pay attention here, because this is one that really is, I think, still underutilized. Let the things that you are not going forward with internally in your organization, let those go to the outside and see what others can do with it instead. And maybe in a few cases it'll be like a boomerang. You let it outside, something exciting develops, and you have an opportunity then to bring it back and work with it again. We already talked about this one. Consumers do care about sustainability, but they're not going to pay much of a premium. And one of the implications of that, by the way, is syndicate your costs and your risks. When Goodyear did the test, they were doing this all on their own, if they had found some partners to work with to lay off some of the costs, some of the risks, they might have been able to progress farther. As I've said earlier, you're going to need to collaborate, whoever you are, if you're trying to achieve any of these SDGs in a meaningful way. So it really requires open innovation to hit those targets. And the last point, which may seem counterintuitive, if you want to work well with knowledge from the outside, it's very important that you open up inside your organization as well. Many larger organizations have these silos where departments or groups don't share knowledge much from one group or department to others inside the organization. Using external knowledge effectively requires you to connect across these different silos and boundaries. So ironically, you have to open up inside to really be successful with opening up outside. And with that, those are my comments, and I very much look forward to your thoughts and your discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Henry. I think I can speak from everyone. That was truly inspiring. Thank you so much. And I believe that there are many questions. So who wants to start?
Oh, thank you, Henry, and everyone who spoke before. When I introduced myself as the founder of the #1 Spanish language blog. But what I didn't mention quickly is that how we achieved that was not just pure luck. It was mixing two of my obsessions, which is data and collective intelligence. And I think one of the fascinating things is harvesting the collective intelligence, our different talents, and adding all that towards working solutions. And I think one of the fascinating things, and specifically related to Enel, is that you have millions of customers, right? There's millions of people who are related to Enel that are connected to Enel but not inside Enel. So there's this collective intelligence that's really close to Enel, and most of them are the ones that are closer to the issues, their problems. So one part might be the issues or the needs of the distribution of electricity, the generation of electricity, and the other is when people are actually using the electricity. And one of the fascinating things is that with these open innovation, and here's where I'm working up towards the question, many times with these open innovation challenges, what we've been seeing in Latin America, I have the luck of running the first makerspace in Chile, the first in Latin America. And these are spaces where people come to work together and just share their knowledge. And the amazing thing is that many times people don't want anything in return. They're not expecting a reward. They're not expecting money, and sometimes not even recognition, which is pretty exciting. Sometimes, attribution is more than enough. That's all they want. And the fascinating thing is that sometimes, even for a Fortune 500 company like Enel, people get excited just by a challenge. For example, if you put forward a challenge saying, there's this small town that has this very specific issue, can you help us solve it? And sometimes just feeling like you were part of the solution. Even if there's this big pecuniary return, monetary return to this large company, people want to share, want to collaborate. We're living this very exciting time. So how do these things mix? Where does collective intelligence turn into open innovation? When does open source or all these open models where people are just sort of giving away their knowledge freely, and more of us are hoping to participate, because in the end, we all end up with a better world.
So I'm going to answer part of that and then turn over to Ernesto to answer part of your question. The part I would answer first is that academics are on the case when it comes to open source. And one of the questions that's been looked at pretty carefully is, when do you want to make it a competition where there's only one winner, and the winner essentially gets the prize, and everybody else competes for the prize, but only one gets the prize? And when do you want to make it more collaborative, where there can be multiple winners, or maybe nobody wins, but everybody collaborates together? So that's a choice in how you design this. And although there's a lot of research to give a long answer, my short answer would be, If you want to go fast, do it with a competition. If you want to go far over a long period of time, and you may not even know what the final destination looks like, then these more collaborative mechanisms, I think, really work well. So different choices, different mechanisms to get there, and both have a role to play. And then over to Ernesto.
Sorry, like open innovation and open source, or open source models where people are working in a longer term, collaboratively on a longer term project.
Right, so you have Top Coder as an example of where software designers compete for prizes. You've got the incentive model where you're trying to solve a challenge. These are prize-based competitions. Even the X Prize, these are all prizes. There's only one winner. But everything's very public and communicated. And then things like open source, you've got a GitHub repository, you've got contributions, you've got new releases every week or every month. You can inspect the code and see who wrote what in the newest release. And no one is making money, but it's all part of a community. So that's what I mean by the different mechanisms. And they all have a role to play.
I totally agree with you. I think that the most talented people, as I said before, they don't work for money. They work to be recognized, to be part of this innovation that can better their life, other people's life, or the world, even the world. And we can mobilize them. We can use them. We can leverage on them, offering, as we are doing, our grids, our plants, our labs, where we host them and we invite them to come to us to work with us. And that's why we have opened up an innovation hub in Chile too, in Santiago, another one in Rio, another one in Catania, where we have the biggest renewable lab that we have in the world, more than 100,000 square meters of labs with the people working on innovation, because we want to host the people who are interested to work with us where we are. And on the other side, we came here in San Francisco. We are in Israel, in Moscow, where there are a lot of innovators, because where they are, we can look for them, we can find them, and we can try to work with them. But business people think that people look for money. They are looking for money. But if you look at artists, they're not looking for money. They are looking for recognition. They are moved by passion. They want to live to make something useful, not to live to make money. And this is how the most brilliant minds work and think too. Not only the artists, but even the tech genius he has this vision of the world and the vision of his life.
Add one more thought on that. So we are working with people that most of them have full-time jobs. They may be retired, but the vast majority of them are still in their working life. So they're doing this in their spare time, in the evenings, on the weekends, etc. Some people like to garden. But there are two psychological factors that have been combined to make the incentive program successful. The first is these people love puzzles. They love problem solving, right? And so you've presented them with a problem. Here are the pieces. Enel's been working on all of these things often for years and years before they ever brought the challenge forward. So they know a lot about it. We know this, we know this, we know this, but we're missing just this piece. That intrigues these people because they love to problem solve, they love puzzles. The second thing is they love competition. Not because they think they're going to get rich from this, but because they would like to win. They'd like to win because it's a validation that they know how to problem solve. It's fun. And so these prizes are typically $25,000. It's not a life-changing event for very many of the people unless they happen to be in a third world country, but it is something that they want to win at. They care about it. They watch the results very carefully. When the prize comes out, if it's not them, they want to know who did win, what was the solution, and so forth. So those two psychological aspects, they love to problem solve, they love puzzles, and they want to win, is more important than the money. The money is a symbol, if you will, for how we recognize who the winner is.
Good morning. Well, first of all, I would like to congratulate Enel and Innocenti for the agreement. And as regards Henry, well, it's an honor having here, well, the father of open innovation. I had two questions. The first one is, once that open innovation has been accepted, how are the Kuhnian anomalies being accepted? Because you spoke about it in a certain way. Are we ready to leave our investment in certain research and development to leave it outside to other companies? And the second question would be, today we are speaking about open innovation, but we have heard as well the word crowdsourcing. Are they exactly the same? Is one an evolution of the other, or are they ancillary? How do you feel about these things?
Sure, so let me start with the second point first. I see crowdsourcing as one important, powerful mechanism to enable open innovation, but only one. So, for example, a collaboration with universities, which is also a very powerful thing to do, would be a different mechanism, but still part of enabling these flows of knowledge from the outside in or from the inside out. So that I do see crowdsourcing as an important example, but it's only one, it's not the whole of the open innovation model. In fact, the whole inside-out part is an entirely different set of pathways. Tell me the first part of the question.
The Kuhnian anomalies.
Oh, yes. So one of the anomalies you saw from the NASA example, we got a great answer, but our internal team is depressed instead of excited. And if you look back to their performance metrics were generally based on problem solving. How many patents did we file last year for things that we invented that we can then patent? And many R&D organizations are measured on the number of patents they generate each year. Well, there's nothing in there about a solution. There's nothing in there about a customer, but that's how we're being measured on our performance. So some of these anomalies arise from frictions or contradictions between the goal of the company and the internal incentive systems to manage different groups inside the company.
Much.
Henry, I have this question. You were saying that people, the consumers are willing to consume green products and services, but they don't want to pay more money for it. So how do we solve this problem? I mean, do you think there's a communicational issue over there? They need more information about how all the services and products are being produced, for example?
So it's a really good question. And I think for the topic of this morning, it's one of those fundamental questions. My sense, and I think others feel, that it's really hard to change consumer behavior over the short or medium term. And the good news about open innovation is that you can actually reduce the cost, accelerate the time, and share the risk of becoming more environmentally sustainable. And if you can do that, you can provide a better environmentally sustainable result without increasing cost to the consumer. I think that's going to be the more powerful way forward, instead of trying to do things that are very environmentally sustainable but make it, the consumers have to pay huge premiums. So I think we have to use open innovation as one of the mechanisms to make this happen without taxing the consumer very much.
Hi, thank you for your inspiring speech. And you mentioned your
Did
speech...
you say my sales pitch?
Inspired. Yours inspired.
Inspiring speech, thank you.
Sorry.
Woo. I was thinking,
Also, it was sold very well.
but
so-
if you want to buy a book, I'd be excited.
Okay. So you mentioned in your speech greenwashing, and you
Yes.
mentioned also some cases in which organizations were very good at innovating and creating some deep change in their organizations. At the same time, some environmental organizations are very worried when they are confronting big companies because they are worried that these changes won't last.
Yes.
Or that anyway they will turn to be just so greenwashing itself. What is, in your experience, the key so from the inside of an organization to understand if a change will last and will actually take a deep change in society? Is it like leadership or what is that? Thank you.
So I'm going to tell a story that my Enel hosts don't realize I'm going to tell, but I think it answers your question quite nicely. I had the chance to write a case study about Enel a couple of years ago, and during my research for that case study, I found this photograph where Greenpeace had actually occupied the corporate headquarters of Enel and had banners about Enel being, killing the planet based on Enel's activities in fossil fuels and nuclear. And this is back in 2010, 2012 timeframe. And in 2014, I think it was, new leadership came into the corporate level of Enel. And instead of treating Greenpeace as the enemy, they actually chose to organize face-to-face discussions between Francesco Starace, the new CEO. Ernesto, I think, was in this meeting, and if he wants to comment, I'll let him do so.
He took a good picture as well.
So instead of a picture of Greenpeace occupying the headquarters, there was a new picture of a conference table with Greenpeace and Enel senior leadership face-to-face talking to one another. To me, that did a couple of important things, and it all relates to leadership. It sends a powerful signal internally that we're under new leadership here. We are taking a different approach to environmental sustainability, and we embrace Greenpeace as a partner in this rather than being occupied by them as an adversary earlier on. It also signals to Greenpeace and the other environmental organizations that we are open to dialogue. We are willing to meet and discuss instead of being closed off from them. So it's not a silver bullet. Many other things have to change too. We still need to anchor it in some kind of a business model that's going to allow us to not only create value, but also sustain ourselves economically over time. We still need that connection. But this example, I think, to me, shows a real shift from not even greenwashing, but being considered the enemy of the planet, to being considered a partner in trying to improve the planet. Sounds like you remember that example.
I have one question for Shashbro. Is when the people talk about the sustainability, they often focus only on environmental uses. Do you see any special reason for that? Should we pay more attention at social uses, like the gap between the poor or rich, something like this? Yeah.
I agree with your question, and I think one benefit of the 17 Sustainability Development Goals is it broadens our perspective from simply an environmental view, which is important, but it's only a part of a much richer, deeper puzzle. Across all 17, there are many that are economic and social in character. I would say to go after those, we are again going to need partnerships and collaborations to make it possible. We're not going to be able, as any single organization, to solve poverty, to reduce inequality, to provide more opportunity for health and well-being. It's going to take collaboration across organizations, across sectors, to make any real impact on that. Thank you.
Hello, I really enjoyed your presentation, and I have this question. Your first book was written in 2003?
Yes.
15 years ago.
Yes.
And a lot of things have changed regarding technology in these last years. What I'm seeing is that the people who boost open innovation in the world. And these people is now growing up with another DNA.
Getting
right?
old.
Yeah. And a new management is coming to brands and companies. So my question is, how do you see the future of open innovation with these main characters in management?
So let me start with the brands, because I think that's a really powerful one, and probably one where many of you are playing maybe even a bigger role than you might realize. I think there was a view, even in 2003, that consumer packaged goods companies like Unilever owned the brands of their various products. With the advent of digital and the spread of communities and commentary and exchange of ideas, the brands are now increasingly owned by the consumers and the communities of consumers around them, to the point where you see websites like IHateWalmart.com. And if the brand is mismanaged or ignores what the actual users of the brand are experiencing, there's a chance that the consumers will take matters into their own hands and really create other ways and other vehicles to express that. So I think that is something that has happened really since 2003. That wasn't much in evidence when the book was written. So the commentariat that you all represent, I think, play a powerful role in how brands are actually managed and how they evolve today. So that would be one thing I've seen. A second thing I've seen is more openness from organizations of all sizes. Innocentive was a spin-out of Eli Lilly in the pharmaceutical industry. And one practice that Eli Lilly has done recently that I'm actually very excited about is they have invited entrepreneurs to come in with their compounds for new drugs, and they will run those compounds through a whole array of tests that they have established over years from their internal product development. They now make this available to external entrepreneurs for free. Bring your compound, test it, we'll give you all the results, no charge. Now, this sounds crazy. Why would you incur all these costs and not charge for it? But if you think about it from another angle, Lilly gets something that the entrepreneurs don't get, which is they get all the data on those tests, and they know how your compound compares to all the other compounds that have been through those same tests. So they not only know your result, they know the underlying distribution of all the results on those tests, which means they get visibility sooner on new opportunities, new deal flow for them at no cost, beyond the cost of running the tests. So that's just a small example of something that wasn't going on in 2003 that I think shows what's possible. Maybe the third thing I would say is that just before the book came out, Steve Ballmer of Microsoft was quoted as saying Linux is a cancer that is going to eat inside corporations and destroy the software architectures of the enterprise. And I would say I give Microsoft a lot of credit, because I think today, not only have they gotten over that, but they are actually using open source in many useful, thoughtful, intelligent ways, and have really become a very important, very relevant company again. And so their own mindset, I think, has dramatically shifted from where it was 15 years ago. So those would be three partial answers to your question.
Amazing, thank you.
As I said before, we are being watched by a lot of people on live stream.
Hi, Steve.
And exactly, and Peter and Maria and so on. And there are a lot of people that are sending us questions. So we will now project one of those. This is, I believe, from Italy. So open innovation and crowdsourcing, what is the relationship between these two activities within a large company? So who wants to pick up these questions?
Harry has already answered. Crowdsourcing is one of the tools that we have to pursue open innovation. We can work with startups, we can work with universities, we can activate crowdsourcing, we can work with
non-profits,
non-profit, NGOs. So this is just one of the tools that we have trying to manage those flows outside in and inside out.
Great.
And I would just add one thing to that, and that is the critical factor that we have found with the success of our clients is what do they do with the solutions that come back. So if 80% of the time you're getting an award, that means you've made progress. But that's not yet a product on the market. So the question is the entity, whether it's NASA, which is a client of ours, or Enel, do they have the internal culture that says this solution is something that has equal weight with something developed internally, for example? And do the people who are in charge of taking things to the marketplace feel that they are going to be rewarded sufficiently for advancing an idea that started from the outside? So what Enel has done is they have totally restructured their entire innovation management and reporting and incentives so that outside ideas that come into the organization aren't squashed because they weren't an inside idea. And that's how crowdsourcing fits into the bigger picture of open innovation. It's about how did that organization reorganize itself on a daily basis to take advantage of the best ideas and solutions wherever they come from. And that starts with leadership at the absolute top of the organization.
Thank you, Craig. Shall we go for the next one? Oh, that's that's our director of communication, Ryan, and he's very sorry. Actually, he's not here today with us because he's in Bogota, in Colombia, and so he's sending us these questions. So, can you please comment further on the role of big data in accelerating the process of sustainable development, both in business and in government? Thanks for the great Enel focus on discussion. Sorry not be with you. Greetings for Bogota. Bye, Ryan. So, who wants to take this question?
I can say that we are using AI to look for startups all around the world. We are using AI to look for patents all around the world. We have a database with 4 million of patents. So how could we check 4 million of patents without using AI, artificial intelligence? So big data is a great opportunity if you take it and you analyze it and if you exploit this data. Otherwise, the risk is that it's what I called in my blog big sola, that in Italian language is a big, how could I, big scam, no? Yeah. Because the risk is that you invest a lot of money in big data without using them. So if you use them, it's an investment. If you don't use them, it's a waste of money. So we are trying to identify the way to use big data even before implementing big data infrastructures. Because if you know how to use it, after you have a real incentive to implement them. Otherwise, the risk is that you are wasting only money. A big hug to my friend Ryan.
So I would just take the government part and say that there's been some very good work done recently to open up governmental data sets, including data sets on environmental issues. And by exposing the data to a much wider group of people, you get many, many more eyes on the problem. And finding patterns and tracing potentially causal connections between activities of different actors and then the resulting data that you're seeing. And one of the nice things about the governments exposing the data more is as citizens can see what's coming out of these governmental activities, they tend to show more support for the governmental activity. When the data are kept very closed, citizens see it as a black box and they don't connect to the mission of the government agency and what it's doing. By opening it up and exposing it, you actually increase citizen support. Yeah. And so that transparency can lead to higher trust. You can get more people looking at these problems and proposing possible interventions. So some very positive dynamics get set, starting with making the data much more open.
Yeah, we've actually done challenges like that for the government. So an example would be the spread of communicable diseases, where we have taken the government data that they've opened up to the entire world, basically, and instead of being worried about whether they'd be criticized that they didn't move quicker, they've taken the attitude, hey, let's show you what we have in terms of the spread of a flu, for example, a particular virulent flu that happens in one spot and then ends up being a multi-state problem. And then we've created challenges around that. AI typically involves algorithms, so coming up with a mathematical formula that helps you make sense of all the data, and then there's a coding or computer part of it where you are putting that algorithm into code so it's something that can be repeated and automated. And we do big data challenges for both government agencies and for the private sector.
Thank you. So shall we come back here? Go ahead, Peter.
Try again. It's George. Buchnic. It's been my experience during the last 2 years trying to build one of the most sustainable houses in the world that there's enough technology out there that you can do it. But there was a logistic crazy thing happening, getting supplies from all over Europe trying to build that house in Romania. So at one point we ended up transporting glass foam, which is 95% air. And it's not cost effective, it costs a lot. So basically we have technology trying to do our most craziest projects. The problem is sourcing that and applying that to a local issue. So I'm looking at this challenge, let's say, for the future, where we have enough knowledge and technology to do almost anything. We can turn the planet green in just in the next generation just by using new, clean, green tech. But my question is, how do we accelerate that and use what we already know? We don't actually need to invent everything. We already have most of it. How do we share that knowledge? How can we imagine a Wikipedia for open innovation and an assistant like, let's call it Inova, and say, hey, Inova, I need clean water in this region, or I need clean energy in this particular community. How do I do that with the latest and newest technology? And that's one of the challenges. How do we get this information, all the information on new technologies across to those who actually need it? Because it was my challenge during the last 3 years getting all that data, and I'm not into buildings, I'm not into construction. I had to put together a team of very young and very enthusiastic engineers and architects, but none of them had the whole picture. We had to work together in a constant way to put all the pieces together, and in the end we managed to have one of the most advanced houses in the world in a country far, far away that you've never seen, that's being Romania. Maybe some of you have seen it, but it's not the Silicon Valley of housing or anything, but we managed to do it locally, but it was a struggle. How do we accelerate countries like Colombia or, I don't know, Botswana or anywhere else with new technology? How do we bring all that knowledge locally? How do we make it accessible to non-technical people that actually need it?
So I have two thoughts on this. One, we're meeting in San Francisco, which has a huge housing crisis. We have a very large homeless population. The cost of rent and buying a place is out of reach for all but the most wealthy people living in the city. So we don't have to go to Romania to find problems. We have real problems right here. It's not comfortable to talk about because we don't have an easy answer for it. That's the first point I wanted to make. I'm sure Romania's got lots of problems with housing too, but we've got huge problems right here. The second point I wanted to make is to build on and generalize your point a little bit. There is enormous knowledge in the world, but we don't always have the knowledge where it needs to be in the form that it needs to be in for us to be able to understand and work with it. This is part of what excites me about what Enel is trying to do in its domain for the number 7 SDG, they are acting, in my view, as a system integrator that's going to plug together lots of different pieces of knowledge from both inside the organization and now, thanks to the incentive relationship and other activities they're doing, from lots and lots of hotspots outside the organization, all in the name of delivering lower cost, more environmentally sustainable energy to the world. And this role of connecting together and integrating pieces of knowledge to create a useful system that solves a real problem, or in this case, an SDG, is, I think, one of the missing pieces in open innovation. It's not enough to generate bits of new knowledge, although that's useful. What really makes it valuable socially is when you connect it and integrate it together. And it sounds like in your startup, you've actually had to do that. To make a much more renewable house in Romania, you had to pull from many different things and pull it all together. To me, this is one area where I think large organizations have an advantage, is the system integration piece. And the entrepreneurs out there can really help in the proofs of concept, the new possibilities that advance the development of knowledge. But when it comes time to really put them together and scale them, large organizations have a lot to offer.
What do you actually have to offer? How can you accelerate that?
We are really accelerating the evolution of technologies in countries where we are. We cannot work on countries where we are not. But according to our definition of innovability, we mean that sustainability is a matter of culture, education, and social, and economic and environmental topics. All of them are related to sustainability. So if we don't create opportunities to better develop countries where we are, we cannot exploit the value of the countries. So it's a win-win approach. With the approach that we use is called creating shared value. It's an expression invented by Professor Michael Porter and Mark Kramer from Harvard. And we try to implement technological hubs even in countries that you couldn't imagine so advanced for technology, but that can help us. I give you some examples. We are working with Seed Starts, that is an association that's active in many African countries, and we are looking for startups, not only technological startups, but social startups. We are working with them to help those countries, because it's a win-win approach. If we help those countries to be more technological, more advanced on technology, we can get these technology improvements for our activities. We are helping some universities. I can mention the Strathmore University from Kenya to prepare, to educate electrical engineers so we can use them. Without electrical engineers, we can't implement new renewable plants. And we are even using elder people from poor villages, educating them to install photovoltaic panels and maintain photovoltaic panels, because we can save money and we can increase the social and cultural conditions in those countries. This is what we have done with Barefoot College all around the world, from India to Colombia, Chile, and Argentina, and in other countries where we need people in isolated areas installing photovoltaic panels and managing the maintenance of them. And it's a win-win approach. Why don't we use resident people, even elder people, because they have time, they have the willingness, they want to learn, and we can save a lot of money, creating new opportunities for them. And what we think, why we have chosen SDG number 7. You can talk about technology if you have at least an energy access. But there are 1.2 billion without any energy access. So even if Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is doing a fantastic job, when they offer as a gift an hospital without energy access, during the night, you can't have a surgery. Even if you have some batteries, if you have a blackout, the person that is under surgery can die. So we are active on developing new innovations able to satisfy the specific needs of those hospitals, because if you are able to implement those technologies in these countries that have not any energy access and that can accept that we try and fail, as in innovation field happens. After we will be able to define new technology solutions that we will re-import in our countries. It's something that we call reverse innovation. That is another expression coming from another very famous professor from United States, Vijay Govindarajan. You go to emerging countries, you test new innovations that can help those countries to be more advanced, and while you are helping them, you are testing your solutions. And after you have innovated and you have improved the social, economical, cultural conditions of those countries, pursuing what we call innovability, innovation and sustainability together.
Yeah, I think there's a misapprehension among some people that the only kind of challenges we do are to create new ideas. And one of the things you said is, hey, there's 1 billion new ideas out there. What about integrating those ideas? What about advancing them to commercialization? What about distributing them more widely to places that don't necessarily have the first world customers available immediately? And our challenge set is more than just new ideas. It absolutely covers all of those different categories. And we have a group of nonprofits as customers as well. And they're often working on the issues of distribution. How do we get solutions to people who can't afford it? How do we lower the cost? How do we transport it better, et cetera? So new ideas is about half of what we do, and the other half is practical solutions for lowering the cost, for commercialization, for distribution. And in fact, some of the challenges we're going to be doing with Enel are actually under Enel's leadership, but there's joint partners as well in some of the countries that they're involved with, because they want to have local partners to help make sure that it gets implemented.
One final thought is I know Enel is involved in vehicle to the grid and vehicle to the home solutions. I'm looking forward for your tests in Norway, I guess, so I can import that to my country, because I built a charging station in front of the house, and I'm going to have too much energy, and I'm going to push some of it into the grid, but I really want it back during the night to use Enel as a smart battery, use the network.
You are right that we have launched the first worldwide commercial activity of vehicle to grid. We launched it in Denmark, and we are working now in France, in Germany, and in UK. And we are very proud of that, because now it's a standard in California. Within 2020, all cars should adopt vehicle to grid. If they don't do, they are not eligible to be sold. So it's a standard that we have invented, and even the Time magazine has called us the disruptor of the automotive industry, even if we don't work in automotive industry. And it's what's happened. He said before that a lot of people with a PhD on biology can give a great idea on another matter. And it's true, because we have invented such innovation that we are proud of in the automotive industry, and we are fully committed to develop it in the United States, where we have bought a startup we were working with that we consider very, very useful for our technological journey. The name of this startup is eMotorworks. And they are the leader in the United States for private infrastructure to recharge electric cars. And they have developed a great platform called Juice. And thanks to them, we are very close to launch into the market the new Juice platform, able to manage vehicle to grid. What is vehicle to grid for people who don't know? Try to imagine you have an electric car. You park this electric car for more or less 23 hours per day. because you use it for 1 hour per day. And when you park this car, you have to plug in the car, you don't do anything, and you get the energy for free. This is very simple for you. You don't do anything, but you allow us to use your battery when you don't use your car, and aggregating thousands of cars, we can stabilize the grid, and the grid can pay us for this service. It's a revolutionary service because it's integrating electric cars into the grids. When you look at an electric car, you think about a tool for transportation. When we look at an electric car, we think at a battery with wheels. That's why.
And
for us, it's a battery.
I'm looking at you as a smart battery. Enel is no longer a supplier, is a smart battery.
Yes, and we don't only, we use these batteries in a smart way to integrate those batteries into the grid. And in the future, probably it's the first time that you are hearing it today, we will have tractors to the grid. We will have, because do you know how many months a tractor is not used? For how many months? On average, for 3 months, a tractor is only parked. So it's a battery that we can use for three months if it's an electric tractor. And we will have buses to the grid. When you don't use a bus, we can stabilize the grid. And why it's very important? Because more and more we are pursuing toward an economy without fossil fuels. And we are pushing on renewables. Renewables are for us the only solution that is sustainable in long term, but they are dependent on the source of natural source of energy. So if there is the wind, you can have the wind source of energy. If there is sun, you are okay. But if there is any wind, any sun, you need a battery. That's why we need a big amount of batteries. But batteries are now all around us. There are batteries in telco networks. There are batteries in hospitals. There are batteries in supermarkets. There are batteries in electric cars. More batteries there will be, more chances we will have to stabilize the grids and to dispatch renewables.
A blockchain of batteries.
A blockchain of batteries can be useful. We strongly believe in blockchain as a technology to increase the security of information flows. We don't believe in cryptocurrencies because from our point of view, there is a waste of CO2, a waste of energy that is not sustainable in long term.
To mine the...
Yes, to mine. To manage the minor activities. And cryptocurrencies, unfortunately, are used for some uses against the law. So
we have just time for one more question.
We can leave a couple.
Okay, 2 questions, but quick. Maybe let's have just one person to answer.
Yes.
So shall we do like that?
So direct your question to one of us.
Yes.
Of course.
And we'll answer it, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, as I told you, I'm a librarian. I work with, for example, the Gates Foundation in the program Beyond Access to transform libraries around the world. And one of the things that you say in your books is that effective services innovation requires new business models. We are thinking about the business model in cultural world, you know, because there's no business model in cultural world. What's the business model for a museum? What's the business model for a library? I don't even know that yet, but I think it's possible to be sustainable in libraries and in museums. I want to know if you know any experience on that matters for the first. And the second question is about the cultural change. You are talking about the things, the best thing that you can do with your using open innovation is open your mind, not open your budget, but open your mind. Because you know, you lose power when you let the power go around the enterprise. One of the things that we best do in Latin America is that we make plans for years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. We never did it, okay? They never become reality. But when you give the people the power to do the plans, then you lose the power in the government, in the organization. How to confront that? How to face that inside the organizations?
So I'll try to be brief because we want to give time for the other question. With regard to business models for museums, I am aware of a couple of things. In some of the larger museums, only a small percentage of their collection is able to be displayed at any point in time. The majority of the items in the collection are actually archived out of view of the public. At the same time, museums depend on donors for a lot of their support, and they typically have an annual event where they have a nice dinner and they give some awards and some recognition. A few museums are starting to put parts of their collection that are not displayed on loan to some of their biggest donors. So the donors can essentially exhibit privately some of the collection in their own homes, and some of the homes are pretty nice, but it gives them a deeper connection to the museum. It allows the work to be viewed rather than simply put away, and I suspect, although I can't prove, that the donors who benefit from this are going to sustain their support longer and maybe at a higher level. So that's a small example of taking what right now is an underutilized asset, the artifacts in the collection, and putting it more to work. So that's my short answer to the first question. The question about the public sector and getting these plans to actually materialize and so on, it does get back to leadership and culture. I think also transparency can be part of resolving the dilemma you point out. Because when city administrations publish their data, they are, in a sense, losing power if we define power as I have the knowledge and you don't. But what they get back by sharing that is they get more support and legitimacy from the people in the community, which might translate into more sustained funding and support for new initiatives. So you may, by giving up some of your knowledge or sharing some of your knowledge, you may in turn get more support to sustain or advance things that otherwise the taxpayer or the citizen wouldn't be willing to do. So if we reframe that from a zero-sum situation to maybe a positive sum, it might enable some new possibilities.
Thank you very much. As a last intervention, very short, I have to say, librarians, we are the very best pirates over the centuries, So we have to rethink the intellectual property for these matters. I think it's the homework that we have to do in the next years to become really open innovators. Thank you very much.
I have a question for Mr. Chora, if he is available. Sorry, I have a question for Mr. Chora. We know that Enel is ready for open innovability, and we are happy of this. But in your experience, really, the old Europe, and Italy in particular, are ready for this new concept, this revolutionary concept?
I have been working as an innovation consultant for more or less 20 years. And according to my experience, unfortunately, the culture is not ready for this open innovability. Because managers think that if they get ideas from outside, they should be fired because they hadn't the idea before. But unfortunately, they didn't understand that the innovation manager, as the professor teaches to all of us, is a manager of flows, information flows. So more information flows do you manage, and better you are. Not more ideas you have in your company, and better you are. And this is a culture that we should change, and we are committed to change this culture, even inviting other companies to join us in our open innovability activities. That's why, since today, we are launching a challenge on Innocentive and our open innovability platform with another company, trying to work together. This is another company, it's a very big company, it's the National Railway company in Italy, Ferrovie dello Stato, in Italy, and we are working together just to give a concrete example that if you want to cooperate with another big company, you can do it, opening up your boundaries and trying to forget that this is your kingdom. The company isn't the kingdom of the managers. If it's the kingdom, the king is the customer, not the manager. And another king is the shareholder. We must be humble and understand that we can't do our best for our company if we don't involve the best people. And the best people, as Harry said many times, don't work only for your company or in your company. Thank you very much.
Perfect. I think we are all ready for the wrap-up. What do you think, Ernesto? The floor is yours.
You asked me to make this wrap-up, but
yes.
From my point of view, I could only say thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you to all of people that organized this Enel Focus On, starting from you and the other colleagues. Thank you to Professor Harry Chesbrough, who honored us being with us. Thank you to Craig Jones and what he did, not only today, but with us to innovate and to speed up our innovation activities. And thanks to all of you, the influencers who came here to give us the chance to increase the culture of open innovability. Open innovability is a great opportunity not only for Enel, but for all companies that can play a fundamental role in bettering the world. This is the real social responsibility of companies, not paying for something, but creating better conditions and adopting SDGs as corporate mantra. If every company adopt one SDG and transform it into a corporate mantra, the world could be much better very fast. So thanks to all of you, and thanks to companies who will follow this open innovability approach, looking for the new book of Harry that I hope it will be Open Innovability.
Ah.
So I just want to join Ernesto to thank all of you, and also we have to thank all of those who are following us on the live stream at home,
I forgot
everywhere.
that. Sorry.
So thank you. And I'm also very happy to announce the next Enel Focus On, because we already have planned it, and it's going to be taking place again in North America. Next time is going to be in Boston, the 27th of June. And we are going to talk about how American corporations go green. So this is going to be very interesting. I hope you all enjoy as much as we did this Enel Focus On, and stay tuned.
Ciao.